Moving is hard. I remember as a child that I moved bedrooms in the only house that I knew. And for months after that move, either my brother or I would sneak from our new bedrooms into the other's room because we did not like being alone. I remember being a new college student and packing up the necessities from home, kind of wondering, what is it that I'm going to need in this new life that I've got at college? What would I not need? And then I remember packing up each year from college. And I would figure out, what things am I going to store for the summer at school? What things am I going to take home to my parents or to summer camp where I would spend most of the summer? And I'd have to think through, what is my housing situation the next year? What sort of boxes do I need to put where? And how do I figure that all out? I even remember packing up everything into my little white car as I prepared to drive myself after college all the way to California for seminary. Would it fit in my car? What would I need? I mean, I knew there would be a Target, but still, what sorts of things did I need to bring with me? And then there's those adult moves. Packing up our California house and taking our 16-month-old daughter and our dog and driving from California to New York. And then 5 years later, packing up in New York, along with our preschooler and our kindergartner, and driving from New York back to California. Each move was harder than I could imagine. Each move seemed, in the moment, impossible, until we took that first step, that first box to get taped shut. That first mile that we would drive from one place to the next. Somehow, once we got started on the journey, it seemed like it would be okay. The journey of Lent sometimes seems like a journey we do not want to embark on. It's depressing, it's sad, but it's critically valuable in so many ways. And in this Lenten journey, we are reminded that God moves with us. Each literal move that we make, each step that we take, God moves with us in our Lenten journey, this season that prepares us, body, heart, and spirit, to walk with Jesus to the cross. This journey that is 40 days long, not a coincidence that it matches up with Jesus' time in the wilderness. Lent is 40 days plus 6 Sundays, so 46 days, seemingly forever, and yet a blink at the very same time. This season provides us with an intentional opportunity to move out into the wilderness. Now, I'm not suggesting that you pack up your tent and head out to Anza Borrego to see the spring bloom, though go for it, or to head out to Joshua Tree for the next 40 days, though you could. We're not packing up a tent and some food, but rather we're taking a move to deepen ourselves, to go into our inner wilderness, to look more closely to deepen our relationship with God in this time. In the story that Dina just read for us, Jesus has just been baptized in the river, and God's voice had just boomed from the clouds, declaring Jesus the Son, the beloved, the one with whom God is well pleased. And it is from that moment that Jesus immediately heads out into the wilderness and spends 40 days. 40 really long days, because apparently he went without food for 40 days. I don't recommend trying this at home. Tempted by the devil. Now, when we hear that voice, this is what we think of, right? Right? Little guy, pitchfork, horns. That's not what the story is about. I invite us to actually set aside that image because that's not what was understood as the devil in those days. Instead, as theologian N.T. Wright suggests, this story does not envisage Jesus engaged in a conversation with a visible figure to whom he could talk to as he could talk to another. The devil's voice appears as strong as the natural ideas in his own head. They are plausible, attractive, and make, as we would say, a lot of sense. So it's not surprising that during these 40 days, all by himself, without food out in the wilderness, Jesus would wrestle with the idea of food. It's not surprising that he would wrestle with the idea of authority. Get yourself out of this situation. It's not surprising that he would wrestle with the idea of getting out of that wilderness, because if we think about the situation, those internal conversations make perfect sense. So very tempting. But what about us? What tempts us in our times of wilderness? In our times of loneliness? In our times of emptiness? In our times of temptation? What are those voices seeping into our heads, trying to tempt us with? Are they voices of greed? Are they temptations to be overly indulgent? Abundantly selfish? Tempting power and prestige? Are they voices that pull us further into isolation, to hide us away from our neighbors? Voices that nudge us to be perpetually busy so we don't have to actually deal with anything else. It's not the little guy in the red suit that tempts us. It's our own inner voices. It's our own inner wrestling. And in this season, we are reminded that even in the midst of all these temptations that do settle into us, we don't go it alone. We follow Jesus, who has been there, done that. We follow Jesus, who shows us what to do in the face of temptation. to turn to God, to rely on God, to remember that we don't survive on earthly greeds, that we are here to worship our God, that we are not to put God to the test, but to have faith and trust. Now, there's a reason this season is 40 days. In the Bible, 40 days is code word for a really long time. And there's a reason that this season comes every year. And it's because we need it. Because it's hard. Because it takes practice over and over and over again. So we are invited onto this journey. This journey to see where God is moving. We've even got our moving boxes. This journey with Jesus that we know leads to the cross, but we also know doesn't end there. This journey that is sometimes fraught with fear and emptiness and loneliness. But this is a journey that we don't go alone. God is moving in and among us. And for that, and for this journey, we say thanks be to God. Amen.